communism is going to destroy this world. Divine, I'm serious. Divine intervention will be our salvation.
We are
going to be cancelled. Being superficial British woman, I only have heard about Milan Fashion Week. So tell me about Dostoevsky.
China before communism, when in fact what they're doing is China into post-modernity.
Once you cancelled me, you can't have me back. The morals are following money.
The freedom of speech in a country should not be dictated by a corporation.
We're not doing propaganda. We are practicing spiritual enlightenment.
Spirituality is a product that you can buy on the shelves of a supermarket.
We have done some incredible but terrifying and cruel job with mass media in Russia.
That was a little bit too gay, wasn't it? Sorry. Let me go back to pretend to be straight. We are unable to innovate, therefore we don't even try.
Culture gone bad is bad. It's bad, and we are back as well.
Yes.
So, Drupi, tell me what's been happening.
Well, I don't know if you heard of it, but there is a war going on. Are you Russian, aren't you?
I'm British, excuse me.
You are British, yeah, but I mean, you used to be Russian. Once upon a time.
Once you go KGB, you never go back.
So, just talking about this idea of people who used to be Russians, Dostoevsky. Did you hear what happened in Milan? At the University Bottega in Milan, that's something disgusting happened.
Well, I'll be honest, being superficial British woman, I only have heard about Milan Fashion Week. So tell me about Dostoevsky.
Exactly. So just during the Milan Fashion Week, Milano Bicocca thought that it was a good idea to take a stance against Putin and in support of Ukraine to cancel Dostoevsky. So basically they asked a professor who was meant to deliver a lesson on Dostoevsky. They asked him not to do it because it could have been interpreted as a sort of controversial thing to do to make him speak about Dostoevsky. And then, Italy is not a country that knows how to handle cancel culture. Is not America, is not England, is not...
It's not as politically correct. Well, that's something I can define
exactly.
For sure.
Italy is intrinsically not politically correct. So they realized that they did the wrong thing. They were trying to imitate probably America or the UK or all these amazingly politically correct countries. And they called the professor and said, we were wrong. Could you come and deliver the Dostoevsky lessons? We probably overreacted. And the guy said, well, given that you
already cancelled him.
I'm not sure I want to deliver the lesson now. Maybe you don't deserve Dostoevsky.
Oh, wow.
And that was a good answer.
I think it's brilliant.
Yes.
Like once you cancelled me, you can't have me back.
Exactly.
That's it.
Exactly.
You got to make up your mind.
You think about cancelling before. Also, what would you do with Bulgakov? He was born in Ukraine, right?
Yeah.
He always identified as Russian, but he was born in Ukraine. What would we do with somebody like Bulgakov? Because today that position would be very controversial.
Well, I mean, Drupi, I'll take it even further. Like, what would you do with most of people in Russia have Ukrainian, like past?
Yeah.
Yeah, exactly. So how can you avoid that, and what you do with that? Well, luckily, I do have books by both authors behind my back. So I feel even when things go downhill and we both get cancelled, I will have some memory to keep. So I guess it keeps my sanity, but I have managed to secure some of literature masterpieces before we've been cancelled. You could say we live in the times before and after war, but we also live in the times before and after cancellation. And I'm not talking about flights.
No, indeed. Yeah.
You know what? Another thing which has been kind of really fascinating me this week, I read a lot of articles and I've come across a new term which is called corporate citizenship. Have you ever heard about it?
Nope.
No? So Obviously, with the war happening, a lot of businesses decided that they will support Ukraine, and now there's new capitalistic flair where you have to decide which country you stand with and which political regime you basically support. I think often before, corporations just were more about making money, and I think this is a huge sort of moral dilemma, and I think I shared some materials with you on this topic this week, is that do corporate businesses focus on making profit because this is what we do, or are we there to take moral and political stance? And essentially, corporate citizenship means what companies are taking stance and they say we support Ukraine and we cancel Russia. Well, I think this is what happened. Russia been cancelled. No more McDonald's.
Do you remember the last week I was complaining about the fact that last time we recorded, I was complaining about the fact that fashion brands didn't seem to react much.
Well, now everyone
everyone is doing it. Why? Because they waited. They were not attacking Russia. They were not taking a stance against Russia because they wanted to see where the power game was heading. They understood that the power game was heading in favor of the West, and everybody was going to be against Russia. And also, they probably understood that Russia was going through an economic crisis, and people were not going to buy anything anyway in Russia. So they thought, okay, because I'm not going to make money in Russia anyway. Therefore, and their accounts are going to be blocked anyway. So they're not buying my brand anyway. So let's take a stance against them because it's more profitable. They're not going to buy in any case. So that's, I think, is what is happening. And they do think that this moral approach will yield more profit, but I'm not sure of that.
Well, apparently morals are following money. That's what we can learn from the past 2 weeks. But, I think, this is a huge dilemma, but also we suddenly start identifying brands with countries. And this is almost like, this type of a heritage marketing where brands, they build the idea of a brand value through having links to some specific nation or country. And now it's becoming like where brands also need to have citizenship according to this theory, which is quite crazy. I feel like if anything, what it does, it splits our society even more. Because we never probably consider, even though we know all brands have origin somewhere, you probably can go everywhere around the world. I mean, until recently and buy Coca-Cola. Obviously now you can't have McDonald's or Coca-Cola in Russia. But the thing is, there are some brands, even though we understand where we're from, we're ubiquitous and experienced on a global scale. But what's happening right now brands say, no, we have a moral stance, therefore we're not existing in this market. And then essentially it only separates us more, and we can think about what our society strives to achieve. We think about the idea what we want: better future, more equal opportunities for everyone. Well, this is what moral values say us. This is why we do that. Well, by building borders and removing things and not making them accessible to wider society, in Russia, you can't get hold of basic medication now. You can't get. I'm not talking about fancy things. All the, for example, cancer organizations, which are international, they stopped their ties with Russia. So now people like doctors in Russia, we can't be part of a global community in the medical frame. Like, why we refuse people medical treatment based on their citizenship? I think this is where it goes. Like, it's such in a corporate culture, but we have to remember medication and pharmaceutical industry, we also corporations, and they also participate in that. And then it makes this experience very polarizing rather than uniting.
In fact, the link to what you're saying, I read some analysts who were very critical of the extent to which we were sanctioning Russia. Now, just disclaimer, I'm not an expert, but I do think that is the correct thing to do, to sanction Russia right now. But this, I was reading this analyst who was explaining how this can obtain the opposite effect, because countries that are sanctioned are cut out from the West, and therefore this increases their nationalism, because they feel somehow because they feel oppressed by being sanctioned, and this allows the dictator or the ruler of those countries to have an argument against the countries that are sanctioning. Therefore, rather than creating problems to the country, it may actually strengthen the consensus around Putin, which is not a good thing. Even though I keep hearing polls, I don't know how reliable they are, that Putin does not have such a big the people don't support. Another thing though I wanted to say before carrying on this is that I am very scared of brands behaving like nations, brands pretending that they are states. This is very, very dangerous. I do believe in the free market, but this is not free market. This is very dangerous, because do you remember when brands canceled Donald Trump from Twitter?
Yeah.
It was disastrous, because
his tweets were pretty good or entertaining.
No, because they were keeping a lot of dictators who are much worse than Donald Trump on Twitter, and they didn't take the same stance in every case. So Donald Trump is not good, but I don't know, but some dictator in some Middle Eastern country that is okay, or some ISIS guy that is okay to keep. So what I'm against is not that. First of all, I am for freedom of speech.
Basically, nothing is equal, really. You know, all things considered, things are not equal. This is the thing. We are selective. We are not only given moral lesson.
Yeah.
When we have double binds, essentially.
The thing is that the reason why that we are, as you say, we are not equal is because we're leaving it to brands to decide. And brands should not be the arbiter of what can be said. If anything, there should be a third party that regulates this sort of fake communication, fake news, a third party, not a brand. The freedom of speech in a country should not be dictated by a corporation. That is extremely dangerous.
Speaking of freedom of speech, I had a very interesting experience recently, Drupi. So I went to see a performance by a ballet dancing troupe called Shen Yun. Basically, it's advertised everywhere in this surreal pastel colors. So if anyone lives in a big city, we would have seen it, because they travel around the world non-stop with their performances every year. Like, it's non-stop performance. Right. I have been watching it for many years, not the performance, the advertising, because it's ubiquitous. It's like next time you're on a tube, like watch around, you'll notice it. So basically, the advertising usually presents some sort of a pastely massive banner, and when there are maybe 50 Asian-looking women taking very complex dance or gymnastic position in traditional Chinese outfit, and it says China before communism, or experience the traditional dance from Asian tradition of China. And basically, I had an opportunity to go and see it. And frankly, I did not research much. And I thought, I'm just going to go and see it for what it is. Obviously, I was a little bit skeptical after, like China before communism and all that. But I just thought, I'm going to go and watch and see it. So essentially, this performance has digital screen behind it, and when dancers do their routine, which is very enigmatic, I would almost describe it hypnotic. The way they dance, it's very repetitive. There are a lot of people, and they do with circular motions. I would say it's mesmerizing on a stimulation of visual repetition and symmetry and proportion. And then there's a digital screen where they synchronize it so well, it looks like they jump out from digital. So it's like a cartoon happening at the same time with performance. But cartoon also says messages like communism is going to destroy this world. Divine, I'm serious. Divine intervention will be our salvation. Don't trust atheism. It's all about the power of God. Communism is bad. We must.
And you pay to do this.
Well, I'll be honest, I did not pay for it, but yes, the tickets are very expensive, actually. Like sometimes, like people pay, I think, up to a few £100 for it.
But this is where, I mean, isn't it very didascalic and stupid to say the goal so bluntly? Shouldn't you suggest the real goal rather than saying it?
Well, I think, like, I was thinking about it because the performance goes for more than 2 hours. And in the beginning, I just thought it was surreal and entertaining. Like, you know, to see this like digital screen, crazy dance performance. And then between each performance, a man and a woman go on stage and they explain you. They say, you know what, we really want to highlight a lot of people in China are being oppressed right now. And next performance, they'll show you the beauty of divine intervention. Let's applaud now. And I was like thinking, like, what the fuck is going on?
So they are exploiting this for making money, essentially.
Yes, I did my research after that, and essentially this is actually American troupe, which says they have people who've been oppressed in China, and apparently they moved to America, and it's a New York-based academy.
Yeah, okay, I understand.
But basically, like, throughout the performance, at some point when we were showing picture of a contemporary city in a video, where was McDonald's?
Yeah,
like it's all beyond.
Right. So, did you watch the Disney movie about Anastasia?
When I was a child, yeah.
When you were a child, was it allowed in Russia?
Yes, it was. Indeed.
Right. Yeah, because I was asking my Russian students and they didn't, because I've got a Russian student called Anastasia, and I was saying, did you watch the Disney movie? And both of them didn't know it.
Maybe I'm older.
Right. But, I'm saying this, and I'm saying it from the perspective of someone who doesn't have any sense of respect for communist regimes. I do not. I'm certainly not a communist. Let's say that. I don't have much passion for communism.
For Shen Yun.
but the way in which sometimes America uses these products to I don't know, to attack communism in a very stupid way, and not in a very sophisticated way. And Anastasia was exactly the same thing. Do you remember the story? The princess Anastasia, who, by the way, was never a princess because she was an imposter who was in some madhouse, the real Anastasia, I mean, claiming to be the princess. But in the Disney movie, of course, she's Anastasia. And there is this sort of conflation between Rasputin and the Bolsheviks, and they are the main people, so the Tsars are amazingly portrayed as this fantastic world, and Rasputin and the hungry and angry people in the streets are sort of the mean, and it's American anti-communist propaganda, but the way in which it's made is so nasty, so ugly, so very basic, one level, no depth, no possibility of such sophistication in the message. So this seems to me the same thing.
I think you got it, Droopy. I have to comment on aesthetics as well. So first of all, the garments, I understand it's probably traditional, but they're incredibly colorful and so much going on. And I also thought...
Pastel, you said, right?
It's pastel, but it's like...
Is it to avoid the red of communism?
There are some, but we also have dancers who represent communists, but communists were black and they have red writing. Like you also have people suddenly who look like contemporary China, but it looks like they're from 50s, like girls in long skirts, and when they have like a scene where communists kill the girls. It's amazing, like honestly, it's surreal. But the thing is, this is my point. Aesthetics, I thought, were so low. This digital performance cartoon happening in the background, it was taking away attention from the amazing choreography, which it just completely killed the choreography. But also, this message suddenly on the screen which says avoid atheism or...
But do you realize that this is not now? On the one level, they say, because the most beautiful thing about this type of American productions, cheap productions, is to try to read it against the grain and find a cracking point. What Derrida called deconstruction, right? Yeah. So the funny thing about this is that they say China before communism, when in fact what they're doing is China into postmodernity, because it's using all the postmodern devices of lights and screens, etc., and it's talking about the very essence of postmodernism, which is the fall and the splintering of the master narratives, one of which is indeed ideology and communism. So it's actually projecting China, rather than before communism, China in the future, in the postmodern future, without ideology, without any master narrative. China after the crumbling of every certainty. And so,
do you know how
therefore, it's not China in the past, it's China in the future.
Yes, so basically, so you have a visual reference. The way the performance ends, suddenly there is a contemporary Chinese city with high rises, and tsunami with the head of Karl Marx comes over and it destroys the city. But guess what? The last moment, some sort of a fairy tale rainbow light comes through, and Buddha emerges from a digital screen, jumps on stage, and saves the day. And this crazy
Buddha. No, this is the thing that I find the most interesting and the most dangerous, is when the West capitalism and this sort of splintered postmodern reality invokes Eastern spirituality.
Yeah, capitalism, spirituality, and McDonald's.
This sort of new age for the masses, where spirituality is a product that you can buy on the shelves of a supermarket. It's not something that you have to devote your life to, but it's something that, you do it once a day, you meditate, And Zizek talks about this very, very often in many of his books, and that's what it seems to me, is using spirituality for something that has nothing to do with spirituality, but is actually buying salvation on the shelf of a supermarket or maybe on Amazon.
I mean, salvation is quite expensive. Like the tickets, very expensive salvation. Maybe it's better just to sin and not accept what we all have to sin. I'm not sure.
Yeah, even salvation becomes a commodified, a marketable commodity. Amazing. Yeah. Like morality. We were saying before, morality and salvation, marketable commodities.
We live in a truly surreal time, truly surreal. But why I want to talk about it today? Because I want to turn it into a different conversation, which is a little bit closer to home. So I thought this thing was, even in a dance performance, it was hypnotic. And my experience was, what the fuck, the whole time. However, most people in the audience were absolutely mesmerized. They were in awe. Like, we literally were adoring it. And I realized with this dance and this message is like a propaganda. Essentially, we are propaganding spirituality in the essence of capitalism. And I understood what some people don't even realize what is going on. We're just watching on these beautiful women spinning in these dresses and their fans and their routine and all this music and sounds and digital stimulation, like brain is stimulated. And I realized this is exactly what Russian TV has been doing for the past years. And this is my comment. I'm not sure how many people actually support Putin. I'm not following the statistics, but I feel like there is a split between people who have been brainwashed by state propaganda, which has been exercised in entertainment TV with this sort of a hypnotic entertainment cheap performances, and government messages, one after another. So I feel this is what happened in Russia. And that's why I thought the evil of everything that is going right now is very banal. Because essentially, people have just been brainwashed into believing the illusionary world.
Yeah. I mean, if you look at, because obviously regimes require support. The only regime that does not require, the only system that requires disagreement is democracy. Democracy loves disagreement, but regimes who don't have space for disagreement still require support. That's why they're not oppressive in the sense that they are necessarily working against the people. Sometimes the people want them. I mean, one example is obviously Nazism or fascism, and it's not by chance that Mussolini thought that cinema was the most potent weapon, and the same with Hitler. His speeches were so amazingly constructed. the image of the chief is always amazingly constructed. But this is obviously, as you say, used even by liberal democracies in a way, entertain the people to teach them.
Yeah, but I think like Russia did it well. Like I do know a lot of people like are completely brainwashed and support Putin. That's for sure. I don't know how many, but a lot. And therefore, I do think they have done some incredible but terrifying and cruel job with mass media in Russia. Like, and I think what's going on, it's a big outcome of
what's
that.
the name of Ivan the Terrible? Ivan the Terrible?
Ivan Grozny.
Ivan Grozny, yeah. Now he's called the Terrible, not for any. He's the first Tsar of Russia, the first Tsar who unified the three Russias, I suppose.
Killed his son.
And killed his son, exactly. That's where I'm getting. So even the three Russias were the small Russia, today called Ukraine, Belarus, the White Russia, and Russia.
Are you
Am
saying
I wrong?
Putin is going to? Yeah. Are you saying Putin is going to repeat his destiny and kill his children?
I don't think he's got any moral any attachment. No, what I want to say is that Putin did something very bad regarding many bad things, but one about Ivan the Terrible, because Ivan Grozny, very Grozny. So essentially, we know that he killed his son, and we know it because one papal politician at the time reported this news in the West.
And second,
right?
there is a painting which is very.
And there is exactly, and there is a painting exactly, and there is a very famous painting of Ivan, I think, after killing his son, or
so
knife, Putin said, also pushed by some other Orthodox high priests, I don't know how to call them. Anyhow, they were questioning the idea that Ivan killed his son, and they said that it was Western propaganda. And they asked to remove the painting, and Putin said the same thing. He said, no. Now most historians would not agree that Ivan killed his son, so that's just Western propaganda trying to make Russia look bad and trying to, everything is a creation of the West. Even the war in Ukraine, it's forbidden to say the word war. They call it liberation, or however they call it, special intervention, because essentially what they're doing in Ukraine is apparently an invention, a creation of the West.
Yeah, we're not doing propaganda. We are practicing spiritual enlightenment.
Yeah, enlightenment. Yeah. Nice.
Well, on a lighter note, so Giuseppe, do you think it's still appropriate to have fun and carry on with fashion weeks, considering what is going on in the world and considering corporate citizenships? How does these two things work together?
I do think that we need to carry on as much as possible in our, we need to carry on. What I don't like is not when the world carries on as normal, but when it carries on as normal, pretending to do it for some major high moral reasons. I don't like hypocrisy, but I do think we should carry on. And I do think that the economy needs to carry on. I do think that, I always think about, without making an incorrect comparison, do you know Primo Levi?
No, I do not.
Primo Levi is one of the most amazing writers ever. He was Jewish and he was Italian, and he was put into in a concentration. He went to Auschwitz, and he was able to escape. And after leaving Auschwitz, he became a writer, and he writes amazingly. But he became a writer there in the worst moment of his life, and virtually in history. And he said that the weird thing about Auschwitz is that even in that situation, some dynamics that are typical of the outside world were able to recreate themselves. People still found a way to laugh, even, or to have light moments, even in that horror. So I think that there is no reason to, and we are not in a concentration camp, so we are in a far less dramatic, not yet at least, but we are in a far less dramatic moment, in at least at home in the West. So I don't see why to cancel our joy, which is ultimately
We'll just
what
cancel
we
Russia.
need. Cancel Russia, yes.
And Dostoevsky.
Yeah. No, I think we need a counterbalance to all this. That's the point. And that's, I think, what also Primo Levi was saying, that you always try to recreate a counterbalance, otherwise you are not able to sustain life. That's why people are able to surpass trauma very often, you know.
Yeah. So Giuseppe, speaking of counterbalance, which shows did stand out to you? Obviously, I think first one we have to address is Balenciaga, because everyone was talking about it, because it was very on point with a contemporary moment.
Yeah, besides, we need to also always remember that fashion collections are thought and created 2 years in advance, so they are not created a few days before, and even the shows, a show like that is not created, you know.
But let's not forget we stitch them up just before we put it on the model wall. You know, garments are often being finished, just literally.
But they are designed and produced, and you have to source the fabric, and you have to request a certain amount of fabric, and therefore you need that time.
You know, absolutely. But
trend forecasters work to 24 months in advance.
Absolutely.
Not by chance.
It's crazy when you think about, like, you think everything is so organized. No, actually, like, the actual finishing touches I always done literally.
No, yeah, absolutely. And sometimes you can even see in a fashion show that the clothes are
coming apart.
Exactly, falling apart.
Just like this world.
Exactly. But yeah, it was rather beautiful. I didn't, to be honest, see the reason. I think that the and this is one thing that I don't like about fashion shows, that very often people are not commenting on the clothes, they're commenting on the show itself. And the show dies. What remains is the clothes. What you're gonna sell in the show, in the shop, is the clothes. In terms of clothes, I didn't see much difference from any other Balenciaga collection. Beautiful. I'm not saying it's not. I thought a lot of things were amazing, but I don't see any disruption. Talking about clothes, the show itself was amazing, and we haven't seen shows like that for a long time, because now fashion brands are much more minimalistic when it comes to shows. We are not in the Galliano and McQueen late 90s, early 2000s moment anymore.
You know what? So, this show reminded me of how I used to take garbage out when I was a child.
Yeah, and they had the garbage bags made of leather.
Well,
they were not. They looked like garbage bags, but they were not. They were made of leather.
Of course, that's the whole satire and irony.
That's a very good idea, but you know, it's not so different conceptually speaking from the IKEA bags. You know what I mean? I didn't see any disruption from what Balenciaga is already doing. It's very much in continuity, so I didn't see the reason for cheering to this collection.
Where did you see
more than any other? Sorry,
where did you see disruption? Like, which collection you think was a disruption?
Well, the most obvious disruptive show for me. Oh, we need to mention Dior. What was that? What was that? Maria Grazia, what are you doing? No, that was a little bit too gay, wasn't it? Sorry. Let me go back to pretend to be straight.
I mean, you know, I think we all are very undefined these times. Well, anyway.
No, that was disruptive, but disruption is not always good, because it was not a well-managed
I'm not sure, like, Dior seemed to be having a moment of uncertainty.
Yeah.
And very odd references.
Stylistically, I mean, beautiful construction.
There were some nice blazers.
Yeah, some nice blazers. Some of the things, the most traditional Maria Grazia Curie signature looks were fantastic. Is the additions that didn't really make sense, and there was some similarities between Balenciaga and Balmain, which was very interesting, because it points out to a certain direction. You know, these clothes made for safety. That was the point of both Balenciaga and Dior and Balmain. This idea of protective gear that becomes fashionable. But the one show that we need to address is Bottega Veneta. First show of Mathieu Blasi.
Yeah. What did you think, Giuseppe?
I really appreciate. I thought was do you remember the first collection of Vaccarello at Saint Laurent?
Oh, not from the top of my head, no.
So the first, I think Saint Laurent's collection, the latest one, was amazing, one of the best shows. But the first collection of Vaccarello at Saint Laurent, Vaccarello was brought into Saint Laurent because they thought he could carry on the job of Hedi Slimane. They didn't want to pay to change the store, to change the aesthetic implant of the aesthetic structures of the brand. Therefore, they got the guy who was cheap and closest to Slimane. But Vaccarello demonstrated that he is not a cheap version of Slimane. He is a designer in his own right. And like the best wines, it became better with age. Therefore, this shows the accomplishment of a collection. Now, the reason why I'm mentioning it now is because his first collection at Saint Laurent was full of potential, but was not fully accomplished. The same thing I thought was Mathieu Blazy. I think Mathieu Blazy will become a very good designer at Bottega. He brought Bottega, he was able to bring Bottega back to its origins and to his outstanding manufacturing, these amazing leather products that Bottega creates without entirely diversifying it from Daniel Lee, but at the same time without mimicking Daniel Lee. However, I think this show was a little bit naive in the styling, in the presentation. The single pieces, though, were amazing. Probably the problem with this show is that the communication of the brand is still is still the victim of Daniel Lee's communication, this sort of minimalistic communication that Daniel Lee imposed to the brand. So the brand has changed with Mathieu Blazy, but the communication still hasn't changed. And I think the communication side of the brand needs to sort of change accordingly. But it is a beautiful Italian version of Hermes for a younger woman. And that is what Bottega should be. So I think from one certain angle, this collection is more Bottega than Daniel Lee's was, and I think we will see pleasant surprises in the future.
Ooh, I'm looking forward to it. But yes, I agree. There were some stunning garments in the show. I also read a very interesting article from another magazine which said what we experienced in a time, and it was specifically about Miu Miu collection, where fashion probably reconsidering its idea of innovation and actually just replicating previous collections and just repeating already successful hits. And I thought it was very interesting take. And in a way, it's not about slowing down, right? It's still producing new garments, but just doing a repetition of itself. Is it like endless era of simulacra, which we are practicing, but taking it to the next extreme? But we don't even bother trying to revive something from 5 years ago. Just revive from tomorrow.
I think that's the problem. The problem is that we are entering a sort of loop, whether we ask ourselves, are we unable to innovate, or we think we are unable to innovate, therefore we don't even try.
I almost feel we are not unable to renovate considering the state of the world, and Joe Biden talking about Third World War. It's just like a little bit...
That is old.
But it's old, but it's also very much, we're going back into the same things. And I feel like Russia returning back to Soviet Union. I watched the Putin speech where he talks about Lenin for 30 minutes.
Oh, yeah.
I think Putin needs to go to Mausoleum on Red Square and have a chat with a guy, because I think he's got a lot to say.
He's still there, by the way.
He's still there.
You know that a couple of years ago, that the Italian Communist Party has historically been the strongest communist party in Europe, and it took sort of instructions directly from Russia back in the day. And one of the Italian relics of the Communist Party proposed to bring Lenin's corpse to Italy.
Well, I mean,
I don't know why, but yeah.
I mean, luckily it's still there, so Putin can go have a chat.
You know that the maintenance is very, very demanding and expensive. They have to every tot months they have to take the corpse and put it in a liquid. Or I read that they have to make some crazy shit to keep the corpse.
I don't have much experience managing corpses, but I do imagine that would be very demanding and expensive enterprise to process. Well, Drippy, you know what I'm gonna say? Considering how ridiculous and surreal world is and all the things which are happening, somehow this China before capitalism Shen Yun seems to be more relevant and real or than reality, like the simulacra of some experience which without original, because there's nothing original, we just made up some story. But this is very much resonating of the moment in which we live.
Did you realize that we today have talked against the people who want to cancel Russia, but also against Putin and the war? We talked against the capitalism that wants to cancel communism, but we also talked against the communism. We are
going to be cancelled.
Yeah, we are so vicious with that.
Well, look
we
at
should
us.
Rule the world. That's the thing. We should rule the world. You and I.
You and I. Well,
yes.
Drippy, we are ruling one thing for sure. Culture gone bad. That's our world.
Yes.
See you next time.
See you.